the next guests on stage came on a plane to Europe. Ladies and gentlemen, a big warm welcome for Heather Russell and Dave McClure. Where are you guys? I cannot see you. The lights are blinding me. Ah, there it is. Yeah, of course. So welcome, being on the Friday at 6 show. I mean, main priority, of course, when you go to Europe, go to the Friday at 6 show.
Okay. Isn't it a lot after 6 right now?
Yeah, it's after 6, yeah.
Okay.
Are you still looking for the explanation why it's called the Friday at 6 show?
No, that's okay. I'm late to most things.
Okay, me too. Excellent explanation. Welcome to the show. They are here because of Geeks on the Plane. Maybe, Dave, you're the main reason why Geeks on the Plane is there.
I'm the main geek.
You're the main geek. So tell us what Geeks on the Plane is.
Geeks on a Plane is a bunch of geeks. We get on planes. We go to like 3 or 4 cities around the world, and we hang out with other startups, and usually do a little bit of geeking out. We look at their projects, find out more about what's going on in the local market, and then have some good food and some beer.
Okay. Well, sounds like a cool concept. Is it working, Heather Russell, because you're on the group this year?
Yeah, it's really great. I'm having a wonderful, wonderful time. I was really apprehensive about coming because there's not that many other women on this tour.
Okay.
And also, I really didn't know anyone. So.
Okay.
But that means that she's in a position of power, so she gets to like choose all the things that are going on.
I am a CEO, so I am a boss, right? So, but I really think it's great. I mean, the number one thing about it, it's kind of like a mini MBA because all these guys are like geniuses, and it's learning so much.
Yeah, I mean, mini MBA is kind of like Fred Wilson claimed this kind of type of thing, right? With this MBA Mondays.
I don't think there's anything at all similar to the MBA and what's going on our bus.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Maybe you have to talk about the content. But are you having fun? It is fun,
Oh,
right?
it's awesome. You're making deep relationships with really awesome people, so definitely recommend it.
Not something to take lightly because it's all about the relations, right? You build in the matter of time that you're building your product. So, but we're going to talk about practical things later because first I had to properly introduce these people because they have their own businesses. They're now on a trip, but they're working on their own stuff, and it also gives you the chance to kind of look at some of the things they've said and done while I'm introducing them because the online viewers will see like screenshots of your websites and they're looking out to the things that you do. So Dave McClure started his own consulting company in the 90s and sold it in 1998. And he's a prolific angel investor and advisor, and he launched the 500 Startups Fund in 2010 that until now has invested in 257 startups. So that's Dave McClure. Any more applause for that? I mean, it's quite an achievement, I think. Yes. Thank you so much. You're enjoying it. I can tell the applause. It's making him all warmed up. So Heather Russell is the founder of Rinkya.com, and that's the largest middleman shopping service connecting Japan and the world. So Rinkya was founded 11 years ago.
Correct. Well, actually, 11 years
11 years ago, and was close to 4 million in revenue last year, and allows anyone to bid on items on the Japanese auction sites.
Correct. Yes.
This is correct. Finally.
Good job.
Yeah, but because it's kind of.
Hire you as my PR.
Yeah, well, I think you cannot pay me, but okay. But I mean, Japan, being an American startup, and then in Japan, you lived in Japan, right? Tell us something about your experiences there, because maybe some Berlin or German businesses want to go to Japan, experience what it's like, interact with this culture. What's it like to do business in Japan?
Well, I don't know if you can call it doing business for someone like me. It was very, very difficult. I moved there in 2000, and the thing about the Japanese is like a lot of people like to say, oh, they're racist, they don't like other people, they won't allow anyone else into their club, but that's not true. They're just xenophobic. So they're just, because they're a homogenous society, they're kind of scared of foreigners, which, I mean, if you have, I mean, it's kind of not conducive to doing business with them. And then being a woman is another dynamic to that. So I started my company there because I didn't want to work necessarily with that. And so I was able to control my future there. And because I did that, I kind of ostracized myself and insulated myself from all those nasty things about the Japanese. But knowing how they are, it's an overt process. So you know what you're getting, so you know how to take it, deal with it, and build around it. So it was difficult in the beginning, but I mean, it was a challenge. And when you have a challenge like that, it forces you to be more creative.
You talk quite explicitly about the Japanese, I mean, but why then Japan? Because it not directly sounds like the most ideal place to start.
Well, I mean, if you can make it in the most difficult environment, you can probably make it anywhere. So, I mean, the Japanese, I chose Japan because I'm a geek. I love Japan since I was a kid. I was a huge Godzilla fan, love anime, video games, all that stuff. And so I just was in love with the culture.
Yeah.
And
but did you have any experience with doing business?
yeah, a couple times. I mean, we were in talks with Yahoo Japan Auctions. And yeah, that's obviously I am still working at Rinkya. Yahoo Japan never acquired us or partnered up with us, so it was very, very difficult.
And how big a role does tech play in your venture?
Well, we definitely have a technology layer. I mean, we're an e-commerce product, and so tech is very important for us. So, I mean, that's why I came on this tour, so I could learn more about how I can implement more tech into my business. So.
Okay, so what are your main areas of focus then here when talking about this technical part in your e-commerce company?
Well, I started my company 12 years ago when I didn't know anything about startups, actually anything about business. And quite frankly, I still don't know. However, I'm always learning. So in terms of technology, I mean, analytics, recommending things to your customers, trying to be more like what Amazon does, actually. So that's what we're aiming for right now. So
sounds like an exciting plan. Dave, tell us something about 500 Hats. What's that?
Well, 500 Hats was originally a website that I started just to write about, experiences in Silicon Valley. Started doing consulting in the late 90s and early 2000s. I worked at PayPal for a little while. When I left PayPal, I started doing some angel investing. And eventually that turned into the fund. 500 Startups was a fund we created to invest in companies both in Silicon Valley and also other places in the US and around the world.
Yeah, I kind of hate this question, but it's also relevant. How big is the fund?
Our first fund was 29 million, and we're still raising our second fund, but hoping to be about 50 million.
Yeah, because I mean, I hate the question because it doesn't say anything about the portfolio you have, but for some kind of reason it makes you look a little bit more important, right?
Yeah, I guess so. That's not so much the goal. I think we're in business to make money for the people who invest in our fund.
Yeah.
Sometimes that can be done with a small fund or a larger fund.
Yeah, because what's the average that you put into companies?
Most of our investments are probably between $50,000 to $100,000 on the first check, and then for some portion of our investments, they might be up to $500,000 to $1 million.
But it is like a portion of 15 to 30. Is that enough in Silicon Valley to get going?
Well, our strategy is pretty different from most other venture capital firms. So a traditional firm probably invests anywhere from maybe 25 to 35 or 40 companies over a 4-year cycle. They probably write checks in the range of $1 to $5 million, maybe up to 10 to 20 million. We do a lot of small bets, so we do probably about 250 companies per fund. Initially, those checks are 50 to 100,000. There may be other people investing more money as well. And then our hope is that probably about 5 to 10% of the portfolio does very well, and maybe another 20% does pretty well.
Yeah. Okay, so the answer is no, but maybe they make it.
What do you mean in terms of whether they're successful?
I mean, only like the really strong companies survive in that sense.
Most companies, most startups probably fail. Probably at least a third, maybe up to half, fail within the first year or two. Maybe if we're lucky, about 1 out of 5 have some positive outcome, and maybe 1 out of 20 might have a very large outcome that's north of $100 million.
Yeah, so 500, as a goal is of course a lot. So
Well, that's just the name. That's not the goal. We'll probably invest in quite a bit more than 500 companies.
yeah, quite a bit more. Yes. So how do you decide to invest in a company or not? What do you take a look at?
Usually I go drinking with them, and then if I beat them at poker, I don't invest. No, we do have some kind of process. Usually what we're looking for is a team that has some engineering skill, maybe some design and marketing skill. We like to see that there's a functional product that's already been built. It doesn't have to have a lot of customers or usage, but at least demonstrates that they can build a product. And then we want to understand, how they make money, at least have a good idea about how it could make money. And then, we usually make decisions somewhat on gut, and then 6 to 12 months later, we find out whether we're right or wrong or not. And then if we're right, then we keep investing in the company, and again, hopefully we find a few that work.
Yeah. And why do you think it's fun to look at all these proposals? Because they're so early stage. I mean, looking at
that part's not always fun.
Okay, yeah. Tell me a little bit about that, because you have to decide really quickly.
Yeah, well, I mean, we have a very large network of founders and mentors that help us make decisions. So at this point, probably over 600 or 700 people that refer companies to us. So usually we like to see that they have a strong opinion about the people involved. And again, we're still going to be wrong a lot of the time, but that helps us make decisions faster and easier.
So do these startups also get some advice from you, or how do you divide your time to all these startups?
Yeah, well, it's not so much based on our time. We have a group of people that do investing, but we also try and build a network of people that provide various skills and services.
Yeah.
So we spend a lot of time building relationships with companies in the Valley like Facebook and Twitter and Google. We have a lot of people from those companies who help mentor our companies. The 3 areas we tend to emphasize a lot are design, engineering, and marketing. And then we're really just trying to help the companies get to a larger, milestone where they can raise more money at some point.
Because I mean, the basic question that a lot of people will ask themselves, and I'm going just to to pose it to you, isn't 500 just isn't it too many? I mean, why not take a couple of them and devote all your time in it and go all the way with them? And not, I mean, it also sounds a bit easy, just pick, it seems like mathematics, and startups are not mathematics, right? I mean, there's a lot of passion, a lot of heart in it.
Well, actually, startups are quite a bit of mathematics, and actually, if you look at how traditional venture capital is being done today, the performance is pretty poor. So I think looking at how we've been practicing the profession over the last 20 years, you would probably draw a conclusion that you should change what you're doing, not continue to do the same thing and produce bad results. But let's take your example a little bit further. Suppose that I were a professor teaching a student. Do you say that, someone who's teaching a class of 100 people, are they spread too thin, or is there actually benefits to teaching classes, in larger groups? Let's say the example of I'm a doctor performing a knee operation. Now, do you want to go get your knee operated on from someone who performs that operation 5 times a year, 50 times a year, or 500 times a year? There's actually certain professions where having a practice that you do in volume or scale adds to your skill and capability. And many things where time is not the dependency, you can actually scale better. And the more companies that are in there, that greater that community might be, and actually provides more chance for success.
But you also wrote a blog post about this, about the black swan forming of that Y Combinator, like other kind of incubator programs do, and they pick a couple. Also Techstars does the same. But when I read this blog post, I thought, okay, you're saying, okay, we will never be like the New York Yankees, like the super sexy, but everybody wants to be like the top of the bill, right? You don't want to be mediocre, right? You want to be the best, and
I certainly didn't write that post.
there's a lot of romanticism involved in that. Why don't you go for that? It seems so you're calculating only.
I certainly am not playing to be unsexy. I'm trying to be successful in my own way, but I think if you're not realistic about where you are in the market and what your current skill set is, then you're just selling somebody a line of bullshit. I think understanding.
Is there a lot of bullshit in the world of startups and incubators?
There's a lot of bullshit in every profession, and I think understanding like where you have skills to add and where you can be accurate about the situation is helpful. So, I think everybody claiming to be the best is not necessarily going to be helpful. And understanding what your differentiated skill set, where you can be good at. If you're a basketball player, maybe you're not the best dunker, maybe you're a great passer. Maybe you're not the person who's going to be like running the fastest, but maybe you can like figure out how to get there in the shortest path. So there's lots of ways to win, and understanding which are the best ways for you and your skill set is important.
So how could you describe then yourself as, how do you want to be remembered in that sense? What do you want to be your legacy as an incubator?
Well, I think part of the areas that we've been trying to emphasize is doing a lot of investments in a diverse set of regions. So internationally, we've been focusing on investments in Brazil, in Mexico, in India. We've actually done probably over 60 or 70 investments around the world. We've also focused a lot on investing in women founders. We think that's been an overlooked category. So yeah. So we think that diversity of approach is actually a strength, and that's two areas that we've spent a lot of time developing our relationships.
So Dave McClure as an incubator is diversification?
Yeah, I think we'd probably choose a few other ways to differentiate ourselves. So we're probably not the most buttoned down and traditional VC. We tend to be a little bit more hustle than maybe the average investor. And we think that stands out.
Okay, you were also talking about women in tech. Heather is here, next to you. We heard Lady Abenko of Corporate Finance Partners say, emphasizing that is also, as such, as being a woman in tech, emphasizing that is a bit of bullshit. Heather, what's your take on that?
I don't like to peg myself as like a woman entrepreneur. I like to peg myself as an entrepreneur.
Right.
And that's what it's about.
Yeah.
So.
But what would you say then to these movements who organize meetings for just girls? Say girls in tech should be acknowledged and there should be more focus on women in tech.
Well, I think whatever you're doing to promote entrepreneurship is fantastic, and I'm not going to hate on anyone. I'm not one to judge what you're doing and what you're not doing. That's all on you. Good luck, kick ass. I think one of the major problems in tech is you have these men in tech designing products for women, and that doesn't work. It's an inherent problem with the industry. So I think women should be designing things for women, or get some more women on your team in key positions, not to serve the damn drinks at the meetings, That's what's going on in Japan. That's what women do in meetings. They serve tea. So, it's unfortunate, but I think the problem is like I said before, in Japan it's overt. Hey, this is what it is. But here in the U.S. or even in Europe, it's covert.
So you visited, which companies did you visit today as part of Geeks on a Plane? Here in Berlin?
We visited
Rocket Internet.
Rocket
Wooga.
Internet.
We went into
Wooga.
SoundCloud and then Wooga.
And then
And General Electric.
Yeah, okay. So
General Electric is a small startup. You might not have heard of them.
yeah, right. Yeah, not that famous indeed. Yeah. Also, their management sucks. I have heard. Yes. Visiting these companies in Berlin, Heather, today. What was your impression?
Well, I love the Germans in general because they're very similar to the Japanese. You know what you're getting. It's everything's on time, everything's perfect, everything goes without a hitch. It's very comforting. So it reminds me of Japan actually. So it's nice, in that respect. And in terms of the technology, yeah, I think it's really fascinating what's going on in this community. It's a mixture of technology, art, music. It's and then you have this underlying current of, like we grew up in the 80s with like the Cold War and socialism, and like we're seeing this underlying current that used to be here. So it's actually quite fascinating to look at that.
Yeah. So Dave, you've also been to Rocket Internet. You know that Rocket Internet is much criticized for photoing, copying design. For example, Amazon, trying to do an exact copycat by photocopying Pinspire, for example. What's your take on that? Because you visited Rocket Internet today.
Well, I think, you can't argue with the fact that they've been pretty successful in building a very large set of businesses in multiple, varieties of places around the world. So one thing I would observe is that they've been very good at operational capacity in a wide variety of global areas. That's probably because a lot of U.S. entrepreneurs have been really, frankly, very shitty at building international businesses. So I don't think they should be faulted for necessarily taking advantage of opportunities that are available. I do think maybe, looking at the types of businesses that they've built, they're extremely similar to maybe other businesses. That might be
down to
polite.
The slides.
So, I probably wouldn't choose to do that line of business, but again, I think they've, developed a set of companies that have been quite successful.
Is it true that because of Rocket Internet, companies in the Valley now pay more attention to internationalization because of the fact that they hate the Rocket Internet guys that much?
I think that's probably a little overstated.
But there is some truth in that.
Yeah, I mean, so the facts of the matter are that like 10, 20 years ago, it was very easy for U.S. entrepreneurs to say, let's just focus on, the U.S. or English-speaking countries because, if they're focused on the U.S., that's 80% of the English-speaking market. Even with many other places, it was like half of the market. And so if you're growing your own business 20% or more per year, it doesn't necessarily make sense to focus on a variety of international markets. I think the playing field has changed, and now you have very large, blocks like, the EU, you have India and China coming up, you have Brazil. So the playing field is not the same. There's lots of people conducting business in English. There's lots of other places that have big economic, areas. So I think if you're planning to be a global entrepreneur, you can't just afford to only focus on US or only focus on English. And so I think, a lot of international entrepreneurs probably have an advantage over US entrepreneurs, given that that's the strategy. You see companies, guys who make Angry Birds, came out of, I think, one of the Nordic countries, and they're a global business, right away. Skype was a global business right away.
Spotify.
So I think, we frankly, US has to catch up in sort of understanding what the playbook looks like when you're trying to build a global business. And, look at, frankly, Mandarin, Spanish, Arabic, languages that are going to be global languages for 20, 30 years out.
Yeah, okay. So last question for you, Dave. I also, by the way, want to ask you to listen to some pitches that we're going to have later on, to judge them if you want to do so. But I think that, people like you have a lot of influence in this whole scene. A lot of the times, like, the normal questions are forgotten. So I think, okay, this question I have to ask. What kind of developments do you see that, interest you in the tech scene?
So that's like what's hot and sexy these days?
Right.
So actually, we've been spending a lot of time looking at education topics and parent and family and kids as kind of customers. I think with the introduction of the iPad over the last few years, we're seeing a really, great device for teaching kids. I have a 5-year-old and a 7-year-old, and it's much easier, much more natural for them to use those devices. They all have credit cards attached to them, at least in the U.S. And so there's really big opportunities to disrupt and break up traditional education methods by building applications targeted for kids. Sometimes those are games, sometimes they're education. And we think that's a global market. So I think really figuring out how you can build education opportunities to help parents and family connect with kids and other members of the family is really important. And frankly, it's a big fucking business.
Okay, thank you. So, guys, if you also want to have a Friday at 6 show in a city somewhere in Europe because you just think it's fun to hang out with each other in an office and to chat a little bit about tech, then please don't hesitate and email FridayatSix at info@FridayatSix.com.